Miguel Martinez-Gonzalez. I am full professor of preventive medicine and public health at the University of Navarra in northern Spain, and I am also adjunct professor at the Department of Nutrition at the Harvard School of Public Health. Well, you know, most of the knowledge that we have acquired in nutrition comes from observational studies, where you observe thousands and thousands of people during decades, 5, 10, 15 years, and you see what is the association between some dietary pattern and the risk of some disease or total mortality or diabetes or whatever. But what we did was to upgrade this approach with a very new method of research that was to do an experimental study with intervention. So basically, we told our participants that they should follow the diet that we were to tell them to follow. So for more than 5 years, we were allocating participants to 3 diets, 7,500 participants, 2,500 of them to one diet, 2,500 to another, and 2,500 to another. And 2 of them were Mediterranean diets. And at the end of the day, we saw what was the effect of these 3 diets on the risk of myocardial infarction, that is heart attacks, stroke, or cardiovascular mortality. And we saw that 2 Mediterranean diets did very well, and they reduced in relative terms in 30% the risk of major cardiovascular disease. This is called PREDIMED, prevention with Mediterranean diet. In addition to this study, I am also the principal investigator of another study called the Seguimiento Universidad de Navarra. There is follow-up of the University of Navarra with 23,000 participants, and we follow up then since 1999 for more than 20 years. And we have observed very strong protective effects of olive oil, Mediterranean diet against cardiovascular disease, breast cancer, hypertension, diabetes, overall mortality. So this is mainly my research. I think that for preventive medicine, that is my specialty, the dietary intervention is the best way to prevent those diseases that account for most part of the global burden of disease. There is chronic disease like cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and also dementia. This is a very interesting question. We started to work in this cohort called SUN, the Seguimiento Universidad de Navarra, University of Navarra follow-up, and we saw that the Mediterranean dietary pattern, the traditional diet of the Mediterranean basin, was able to substantially reduce the risk of developing a depression in people who were never depressed before. So we took a lot of care in order to avoid what we call reverse causality. That is, that depression may lead to worse dietary habits. And that was not the case. It was poor dietary habits led to higher risk of depression in the long term after a long follow-up period. This was very important. And in subsequent studies, other groups were able to replicate our findings, for example, in Australia, in the United States, in the United Kingdom, with a good dietary pattern. They were able to demonstrate a reduction in the risk of depression. There is less evidence on this topic, on stress, than on depression. Stress, of course, is a very powerful risk factor for developing depression. And what we think after being studying depression for the risk factors for depression for a long time is that there is a synergy between stress and a poor diet. So if you have a better diet, you can in some way attenuate the harmful effects of stress on the risk of developing a depression. But we don't have very good studies showing that a good diet may reduce the risk of developing stress. Stress is more related to the other aspects of the lifestyle, of the working environment, on the type of family, and on personality, of course. I think that the dietary model, we now in nutrition, we are focused on the overall complete food patterns, not in a single macronutrient, but in the overall concept of a diet. The best model, best supported by a big accrual of evidence, is the Mediterranean, the traditional Mediterranean diet that was followed during the 50s and the 60s of the past century in Crete and other areas of the Mediterranean Sea, like Greece, Italy, Spain. And this diet was characterized by a low intake of meat and meat products, with the consumption of minimally processed or non-processed foods, very rich in fruits, vegetables, extra virgin olive oil. Olive oil is definitely very important. It accounts for 20-25% of total calories. That is very important. And also tree nuts and legumes and fish. And this is very important in the Japanese diet. In the Japanese diet, there is a lot of fish, but the problem is that sometimes this fish is consumed with a lot of salt, for example, with soya sauce, and this is harmful because in the Mediterranean area, the way of cooking fish is with aromatic herbs and with not so much salt. So this is a difference, with a lot of olive oil and some a special sauce made of tomato, onion, garlic, and it is very tasty, but it is not so salty. We introduced an intervention tool called MIDAS, MEDAS, Mediterranean Diet Adherence Screener. And in this tool that has 14 items, we introduced the two first items were related to the consumption of olive oil. And in the first item, we said that you need to use olive oil for all culinary purposes, including for spreading on bread, for replacing butter or margarine, for cooking, for frying, for dressing salads. And in total, we recommended between 45 and 50 grams per day for all these uses combined together. That was the second point in this MIDAS. We have very good evidence that there is not an increased risk of developing obesity or weight gain with this amount of olive oil daily. In fact, we published in Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology one of the largest and longest studies of nutrition and weight change. And also we measured the waist perimeter, the waist circumference. And we saw that in comparison with a control group, the people allocated to extra virgin olive oil receiving 15 liters of extra virgin olive oil at no cost every 3 months for them and their families. So this means 1 liter per week for a family. They did better regarding the average weight and also the size of their waist perimeter. So they did not experience any increase in obesity, in general obesity, or abdominal obesity. So this is a very good evidence. And this is also included in a big picture of many other studies, including the Seguimiento Universidad de Navarra, the SAN study, where we saw that large amounts of olive oil, they are customarily consumed in the Mediterranean diet, in the traditional Mediterranean diet. They are not associated with a higher risk of weight gain. Why is this happening? Probably because not all the olive oil that is consumed is absorbed. The human gut has a limited ability to absorb so much fat together, and because the great danger for the great risk for weight gain is not fat, it is added sugars and ultra-processed foods. So when you add olive oil to salads, salads are very important in the Mediterranean cuisine. And when you add olive oil for salads, you are also eating a lot of vegetables. And it is very difficult to eat so much, so large amounts of vegetables if you don't add olive oil. That gives them a very, makes them very tasty, very palatable. Yes, there is evidence that the Mediterranean diet is a good tool to contribute to the prevention of cancer, especially breast cancer, and also colorectal cancer, and also for gastric, for stomach cancer, and esophagus cancer. But the evidence is not so strong as it is for stroke or coronary heart disease regarding cancer, because it is more difficult to study the association between a dietary pattern and the risk of cancer. You need to have a very long follow-up period. The change in the risk is not so fast when you are studying the risk of cancer. There is a very slow process. So I think that also the reduction in salt and other aspects of the lifestyle, for example, for breast cancer or prostate cancer, they are more related to hormonal factors, are important also. So the ability of a dietary change to bring down the rates of cancer is more limited than to bring down the rates of heart disease. Regardless of the genetic profile, the evidence that we have nowadays on the beneficial effects of the Mediterranean diet are covering all the planet. So we have studies in many different places, in Asian countries, in Australia, in Northern European countries, in the United States, in Southern America. In many countries, we do have a strong evidence of the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, especially regarding the reduction in the risk of cardiovascular disease. We published 2 years ago in the journal Circulation Research a very comprehensive, a very long review with all the evidence all around the world, and the results are consistent regardless of the genetic profile of the population those countries. Of course, I think that social support, conviviality, good interpersonal relationships are very important for health, definitely. And these are very good assets of the Mediterranean countries. But when we do our studies, we are comparing Mediterranean people who follow the Mediterranean diet, Mediterranean people who don't follow the Mediterranean diet, but their environment is exactly the same. And regardless of the environment, keeping constant the environment, this social, very positive and beneficial environment that is equal for both, those who do follow the Mediterranean diet always exhibit better health indicators than those who don't. We don't have much experience on that kind of mixture of Mediterranean cuisine with another cuisine. I think that regarding Japan, the Okinawa diet has a lot of strengths, and it is more similar to the Mediterranean diet. So I will try, if trying something, to try to obtain further evidence, long-term evidence with good observational cohort studies with thousands and thousands of people individually follow up for a long time with the Okinawa diet, especially. And in many aspects, the Okinawa diet can be the best version of the Mediterranean diet for the Japanese people. La dieta mediterránea es el patrón alimentario global que tiene la mejor evidencia de prevención cardiovascular. Estamos hablando de la principal causa de mortalidad en el mundo, de muertes prematuras, ¿verdad? Y esta dieta no se concibe sin un consumo abundante de aceite de oliva, especialmente aceite de oliva virgen extra, que es la principal fuente de grasa culinaria y que puede representar hasta el 20-25% del total de las calorías que se consumen en una dieta mediterránea tradicional, que no es la que ahora se consume en España, Grecia o Italia, es la que consumían nuestros abuelos en 1950, 1960.